we were watching because towards the end of Heat, this episode, they got into the steroid scandal.
Yes.
And sort of how the steroid scandal got brought to light was through Phil Mushnick.
Yes.
And I remember when we were watching it, I may have heard it wrong, but I heard Phil Mushnick admitting to being an FBI informant. But when I played it, I don't know if you have the clip, but when I played it back, he basically was saying that he was an FBI informant in the way that the FBI would read his articles and then follow that. So he wasn't necessarily saying he was a direct FBI informant. I mean, he could have been playing with the whistleblower. He was a whistleblower. However, here's the thing, is it turned out that he was wrong and he was basing it off of just sort of his conjecture, because the FBI didn't even find any evidence that Vince McMahon was distributing steroids to his employees. Another thing that Vince finally admitted to was taking steroids himself and buying steroids from the same doctor.
And everyone now all the wrestlers back in the old time wrestlers were admitting for taking the steroids. We finally got Hulk Hogan to say he took it. Because we saw that famous clip him in the Apollo saying he doesn't. He's clean, never takes steroids. And you see Vince commenting, "Oh, just be honest. Just tell the truth. Come on out clean, pal. Don't do that. That's just say it. We made a mistake." And what I saw, and this is true to this day. America loves a redemption story. If you admit and you humble yourself of making a mistake and you look for it, it might take a long time to get redeemed or brought back up, or you might not even get to where you were. But everyone likes a redemption story, and we'll talk about Mike Tyson, and I'll give you a case in point when Mike Tyson is a redemption story to a degree and so forth. But I like the fact that we talked about Phil Mushnick, enlightening or pushing the FBI towards Vince McMahon, and they were trying to get him from, he was the one distributing and forcing his performers to take the enhancement in order to keep his show going. If you were going to be part of it, kind of insinuated, if you're going to be a top guy in the WWE or you want to keep your job, you have to take the steroids. And they're making it seem like he was the one supplying them. You're going to take this because I need you to look like this. And that's where they were trying to get him in the court of law, where they get the big trial in Uniondale, Long Island, and he came out winning. They thought Hogan was going to flip, and it's interesting. Hulk Hogan at that time wanted his release. He wasn't really hitting no more. Kind of was a man of kind of stale in the WWE. And they had that agreement. If I get okay, I'll give you your release, but you cannot wrestle for my competition. So Vince and him had a verbal agreement. He says, "I wish I would have put it in writing." And then he turns around and signed with World Championship Wrestling, the Turner Company. And Vince felt like, damn, I'm getting now slings and arrows. I'm getting accused by federal government. Now my main big star is signing with the competition, bailing on me. Felt like the house was collapsing on him, or in a corner. You know what they say? A rabid animal in a corner comes out more vicious.
And then on top of it, not only was his big star going to the other company now, and this is where Vince was looking at it, he's now the star witness for the FBI against him. Mm-hmm. Now, I got to give Hogan credit for not turning on Vince and telling them, and that would have been a great moment. Well, not moment, but a great chance for him to screw Vince over. Is to just go, yeah, he made me take steroids.
Right.
And it was so saying that. Yeah, it was so easy, and he didn't do it. So it leads me to believe that there wasn't a distribution involving Vince. And I think Vince was actually one of the customers.
Yes, he admitted
as he admitted to. Something shocking, you kind of said it too, was that Vince also had a lot of these guys on handshake agreements. They weren't even contracted.
Right. And
WCW, Eric Bischoff, which, you got to give it to him, was a genius move. He was able to take advantage of that and also take advantage of that Vince was going through the steroid trial.
Right.
And swoop in and take all of his Vince's wrestlers. Now, I used to always question, how was Bischoff able to do that if they were under contract? And it makes a lot of sense now. Vince didn't have them under actual contract.
Right.
Had them under old school. They call it a New Jersey contract, handshake agreement.
handshake agreement that we're gonna do 13 dates. And then, hey, I would like you to stay for another 13 dates. Okay, yeah, no problem. And then if that, they could walk out whatever they want. How many times the Ultimate Warrior left the WWE and returned back
Yeah.
and forth back in the days. And one thing I
And
wanted
hold
to
them
say
up
with
for money.
correct. One thing also
Yeah.
about the steroids, Vince was saying, and again, pop culture. Remember how we talked about pop culture? About, with the music and also the movies. You saw Commando, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sylvester Stallone. You're seeing the Hollywood influence, the big, bad, strong guys looking so muscular, so built. I want that in my ring, and that's where Mushnick might have misinterpreted and thought that Vince was the distributor because they want to look like Hollywood, and he is the owner of the company. Maybe he wants to. We need to look this. We need to go like that. And here, I got this for you guys to provide you guys to look like the guys on TV. Maybe that's where Mushnick and the federal government looked at it and say we have to peek into this because there's legs to this because of what we see on our TV screen from Hollywood. So that's another big influence for the WWE and bringing that unnecessary heat to the WWE that's needed for that trial.
I tend to go into more of a conspiratorial, I guess, area with that. And I do believe that the journalists in America have been connected to the FBI for a long time. And they've been tipping off the FBI for a long time about certain things. And the FBI will go off of a journalist's word when there's not really any evidence to it. And that's kind of what happened with the Vince McMahon thing. And it's like, I'm not saying it was, but I get when Vince was saying that this was just an FBI witch hunt because it kind of was. They didn't really have a reason other than some articles that were written by somebody who wasn't even connected to Vince and that had a long history of hating Vince for no reason, no apparent reason.
And it felt like the doctor got pinched and he was looking for a plea deal to, well, if I could give you Vince, who's a bigger name than just Joe Show Doctor. Joe Show Doctor just loses his license, practicing license, and that's it. He'll go to jail and it's not a blip on the radar. Maybe 15 minutes of fame. Joe Show Doctor was selling steroids and other prescription drugs to the World Wrestling Federation at that time, and that's it. He goes away 15 minutes now, and like he said, certain mainstream Mushnick says maybe certain mainstream media won't even cover it. That's wrestling. I'm not gonna really get into it, but if it's Vince McMahon, the guy who at WrestleMania and this and that and larger than life, and if he gets pinned, it becomes a story now for about a month or so. It would have got more traction than the doctor himself. So maybe that's where the doctor wanted to get a plea deal and say, I'll give you a bigger fish if I get a plea deal or slap on the wrist. You're all right. I won't practice law in this country for whatever, 10 years, whatever plea deal we never knew. We don't know that for a fact. We're just hypothetically speaking on that. They meant, why he gave Vince McMahon instead of just him. So interesting.
And a big part of it too is what you're saying. It's scapegoat. We need to find a scapegoat. Also, we need to take down a billionaire or a millionaire, or it's one of those things. It's like it's a feather in the cap of a journalist.
Not only that, that's when in the 80s when President Reagan put that war on drugs, where they needed to find an example and say no to drugs for in the 80s before that was implemented. So they wanted to make sure that president policy on say no to drugs, they needed a face. They couldn't go after the narcos in the cocaine and the crack. That's before crack blew up. So they got steroids. When you saw that infiltrating NFL, you started seeing to infiltrate MLB in the late 80s. Now wrestling was the most easier target because it would have shake the foundation of the major sports in America. So let's get wrestling, which at that time wasn't a major sport in America, and we can make an example so the other sports could fall in line with in Reagan's policy of say no to drugs. In my opinion, I felt that's also where the government was going to.
Well, my final take on the whole steroid thing in wrestling, honestly, I don't think it's that big of a deal. I think wrestling, it's not a real competition. If it helps these guys, performance enhancement, if it helps them put on a better show, I don't think it's really it's not cheating. It's not. It's a if it's illegal, that's one thing. But if there's performance enhancements that are legal, I don't have a problem with it.
Right. If it's legally regulated by the government, USDA, and they're able to use it, fine. If it's not legal, then if it's illegal by the government, I mean, rules are rules, I guess. That's a touchy subject for
I
myself on that one, with that one.
I also say let wrestlers do cocaine again because it was much more entertainment.
We got Tony Khan doing that, so he's how good
Well,
that does.
no, we don't need the owner on cocaine.